Hi guys, it's Virginia here, and I am here to introduce you to my new web series. What is my new web series, you're asking? The Fundamental Misunderstanding of Rian Johnson. Now, I didn't intend for this to be a web series. I was just gonna do a review video of The Last Jedi and say all the things that were wrong in it, but I decided that if I did that, it would be 3 or 4 hours long, at minimum. So I've just decided to write a web series where I just sit in front of my camera and do what I normally do, but talk to you about why certain things that Rian Johnson did in The Last Jedi is inherently wrong, based on cinematic tells, characterization, the setup in The Force Awakens, the original trilogy, and just basic storytelling practices, writing practices. Literally everything he did in The Last Jedi proved that he is not just a bad writer, but an incompetent one. And I don't understand how anyone can try to apologize for this movie. And yes, that's what I call people who actually like this movie. I call them The Last Jedi apologists, because for some reason, they want to like The Last Jedi so badly, that they will accept what was given to them on screen without critically thinking. And honestly, I don't want to say that about a whole group of people, but I can't give any other explanation as to what they're doing or why they like it, because there was objectively nothing good in this movie. Was there? Okay, were there pretty cool visuals every now and again? Yeah. Was Haldo blowing, doing the kamikaze run pretty cool? Yeah. Was some of the throne room scene pretty good? Yeah. I honestly say the only scene in that movie that I actually sort of liked was the throne room scene when Rey and Kylo were fighting side by side, until that was crushed. But that's a whole nother story that I don't even know if I'm going to end up talking about, because this web series is called The Fundamental Misunderstanding of Rian Johnson. And in this series, I am going to talk about how he fundamentally misunderstands how to write, basic plot construction. He fundamentally misunderstands various characters and so many other things that I really can't think of right now, because my brain is in the mindset to talk to you about one of the things that has bothered people for a long time, for over a month and a half now, basically since the very first showing, and actually bothers Mark Hamill. So you know what? By saying that, I'm sure you know what I'm going to talk about. The very first installment into the series is The Fundamental Misunderstanding of the Character of Luke Skywalker. And just throwing it out there, Mark Hamill has said on various occasions that Luke Skywalker that was in this movie was not his Luke Skywalker, and he had to think of him as Jake, because it's not who he played for, years. So, I don't know. I think that was a pretty good tell. He was trying to warn us that we were going to be wildly disappointed by how he was portrayed. And we were. Anyone actually watching the movie and who cares about Luke Skywalker literally wants to punch Rian Johnson in the face because of this. So, why is Luke Skywalker not in The Last Jedi? Because he wasn't. That was Jake Skywalker. So, we are going to talk about the fundamental misunderstanding of the character of Luke Skywalker, because we know Rian Johnson was trying to write Luke Skywalker, but instead gave us some OOC piece of trash, bitter hermit bitch. So, sorry about that. It just came right out my mouth. Right out my mouth. I didn't even want to curse there. It just came straight out my mouth. And I apologize. So, the first thing that we're going to talk about is who Luke Skywalker is, or rather who he was before The Last Jedi. So I actually wrote something at some point that basically sums up who Luke Skywalker was, and it's from the perspective of a fan who's been watching this series since she was before she can actually remember. So I know who Luke Skywalker is, and pretty much everyone who's read this is just like, she's right, dude. She's right. I can't argue with her here. So, Luke Skywalker is loyal, loving, emotional, and a great person. He has endured extreme trauma after living an extremely sheltered life. But then his father is literally the cause of a lot of that pain in his life. But because of who Luke is, he wants to save his father, regardless of what it means for him. Luke Skywalker is highly emotional, extremely loving. I honestly feel like if you wanted to give him a Myers-Briggs personality test, like, he would probably be INFP, which is me. And he's so fiercely loyal. He loves his family above everything else. And he is just a great person. But is he a perfect individual? Absolutely not. And we all know that. That was part of the whole thing in the original trilogy. They didn't want to set up Luke as an infallible human being because he was a Jedi. Didn't make him perfect. Because he was a great person didn't make him perfect. He was naive at times. Sometimes he had misplaced faith. He almost fell to the dark side. No one in their right mind is under the impression that Luke Skywalker was ever a perfect human being who could do no wrong. Because we've seen him in the original trilogy, and we read about him in some of the extended universe books, which we know is no longer canon, where he almost fell to the dark side. In Return of the Jedi, we saw that happen. We know that he has the capability for intense darkness, just like his father, because of how deeply emotional he is. We know that some of his character traits could lead to him being a very, if he used it the wrong way, which he refused to use it the wrong way, he used his abilities in the right way. We knew that if he chose to use his abilities in the way his father did, he could be one of the most detrimental forces in the galaxy. But he refused to do that. So we understand Luke Skywalker as someone with a wonderful human being who is so loyal, so emotional, so he's a steadfastly pure enough person, but we know that he has the capability for darkness, and that he's naive, and that sometimes his emotions take control of him, and we know that he's not perfect. The original trilogy never set him up to be that way. So anyone who was under that impression going into The Last Jedi and liked his character deconstruction because of that fundamentally misunderstands the character of Luke Skywalker, as does Rian Johnson. Because from what I could tell in The Last Jedi, like I said, Luke Skywalker wasn't even in that movie because he wasn't there. I did not see Luke Skywalker in that movie. I saw someone who looked like him, but I did not see anything that resembled Luke Skywalker past the physical. There was nothing else. There was nothing there. So, what am I going to talk about first? God, there's so much. I know that one of these things is going to be the longest, and you already know what I'm going to talk about. That's going to be the longest part of this video. And it's already pretty long. So, by the way, just letting you know, this is going to be a long video, 20 or 30 minutes. It might be longer, don't know yet. We're gonna see. So, what should be the very first thing I talk about? Now, I know this doesn't look right. I'm going to take that out. Okay, so the very first thing I'm going to talk about is because it's kind of a low-key, thing that's really stuck in a lot of people's craw. When Rey told Luke that she was sent there by his sister, and that the Resistance needs his help. I don't know if anyone else remembers, but in the original trilogy, Luke said, "We have to help her," referring to Leia. And considering he loves his family, and he's so loyal to his family and so emotional, emotionally invested in his family. I don't understand why when Rey said that, he didn't, go straight like, all right, Leia needs me. Let's go, kid. And see, nobody understands that because they have, and also like, they have a Force bond. I understand this whole thing about how, he cut himself off from the Force, which is just like, I didn't even think about talking about that tonight. I gotta throw that one in too. Sorry. Okay, so he has this Force bond with Leia and deeply understands her emotions and deeply understands what happens in her life from far, far away. No pun intended. But for some reason, when Leia is faced with grave danger in the form of her son, her only son, and this person comes to Luke saying, "The Resistance needs your help. Your sister Leia sent me to come get you." He basically says, "F off, kid. I'm not coming back." I don't know. I don't know about that. I don't think so. I don't think that's something he would have done. Okay. Now, also, the second thing that I want to talk about is that he, for some reason, didn't know that Han was dead. I mean, after Rey told him that that she came in the Millennium Falcon with Chewie, he, for some reason, he was just like, where's Han? Like, I'm pretty sure, considering they've been best friends for 30 years, that he would know that he's dead, that he would know that Han was murdered in the way that he was by his only son, and, well, would have mourned, and when it was validated for him, even if he, for some reason didn't know, when it was validated for him, I really think that he would have mourned over him. But, Rian felt like that wasn't important enough to throw in the movie. He felt like Han's funeral wasn't important enough to throw in the movie. But, whatever. Now, the very first thing in the movie that gave people the impression that, oh shit, this isn't going to be Luke Skywalker, was when we finally saw Luke Skywalker take the lightsaber from Rey and look at it, and you're looking at him like, oh shit, no. And then he yeets it over his shoulder, and you're like, pardon me? What? No, this was his father's lightsaber. The person who he worked for like 6 years like 5 or 6 years to redeem. This was his lightsaber when he was a Jedi Knight. This is the lightsaber he thought he lost. This lightsaber means something to him, and we all know that. It was his father's lightsaber. And I just don't understand why he would throw it over his shoulder, because he wanted his father to live after he was finally redeemed. He wanted his father to live and, probably, live with him for a while until, he actually, croaked of his own accord. And it wasn't just something, like a shallow end, but it kind of made sense. But Luke wanted his father to live and believed so dearly in that he was a Jedi like his father before him. This was Jedi Knight Anakin Skywalker's lightsaber. He would not have thrown it away like it was trash. That is not who Luke Skywalker is, especially because he so dearly loves his family and so deeply believed in the goodness of his father. That's not something he would have done. And something else that falls apart here, I can't even understand how this got through, final post-production, that Luke Skywalker, when he was force projecting himself across the freaking galaxy, which, was something that apparently some Jedi can do, which is not something I'm going to question, but I'm going to question his death. Definitely going to do that one. He force projected himself across the galaxy, gave him new digs, new haircut, shaved it, made himself not so scruffy, and he force projected himself with his father's lightsaber. That to me was so fucking powerful, because it's just like, wow. Well, when you briefly thought that, this Luke actually came back. He actually came back and he brought his father's lightsaber. But then you're also like kind of thinking like, how did he have his father's lightsaber? Didn't Rey just, destroy that? But whatever. Rey and Kylo just destroyed that. But he force projected himself across the galaxy with his own father's lightsaber to face Kylo Ren. That proves that lightsaber means something to him. That it's not just a piece of trash or memory, a remnant of his mistakes, because it's not part of his mistakes. It's not. It was used when when Anakin was fighting Obi-Wan. It was used when I think it was used when he was first fighting his own father, but it was not a memory or a remnant of his mistakes, because as I understand it, that was the first time, at the end of The Force Awakens, that was the first time in probably 20 or more years where he actually saw that lightsaber. I mean, I don't know if... See, the thing is, I was never clear, because, there's no explanation on anything in The Last Jedi, how the hell Kylo Ren... Ben Solo at the time had his lightsaber when it was lost. That's another question that I have that literally just popped into my head right now. This movie gets worse and worse every single day. So he force projected across the galaxy with his... This is the first time he's seen his lightsaber, and he feels like he has to throw it over his shoulder, but then later force project with the visual of his father's lightsaber. That falls apart. It makes it not make any sense. Why would he throw it over his shoulder if he felt it was important to force project across the freaking galaxy with his father's lightsaber? Because you know what? He actually loves his family a lot more than Rian Johnson even fucking knows, apparently. But Rian Johnson subconsciously seems to understand some things about Luke Skywalker, but consciously he cannot write Luke Skywalker for the life of him, and I don't understand why, because Luke Skywalker isn't that hard of a character to understand. I hate to be that way, but he's not. Okay, now what's the next thing? Oh yeah, that is another thing before I get into the real crux of this thing, which is gonna take a few minutes. Luke Skywalker's character, as we have discussed, was bitter. Basically, that was his only character trait. Bitter, regretful, I can't really give you many descriptors because he was a pretty one-dimensional character in The Last Jedi. He was basically bitter and regretful for something that we're gonna be talking about in a minute. He was very unwilling to teach Rey because, well, I'm scared to teach another person because, well, this happened, but I'm not going to tell you exactly what happened. Yeah. So, he was trying to disgust Rey by drinking the milk basically straight out the titty, and I don't understand. He wouldn't have treated Rey that way. He would not have treated Rey that way. He wouldn't have tried to disgust this girl he just met, who's literally coming to him for help. Luke, we have to help her, Skywalker, is trying to turn people away when they're asking for help. Luke, we have to help him, Skywalker. We have to help her, Skywalker, is trying to disgust people who is trying to disgust people who are basically begging for his help because they have nowhere else to turn. That is not the Luke Skywalker I know. I can understand if you wanted to make him a little, maybe a little bitter, a little, hermity. That's okay. Like, shit happens, trauma happens, time can change people a bit, but that's something else we're gonna... No, actually, we're going to do that right now. We're going to throw it down. So, apparently, according to Disney canon, the time between Kylo's turn to the dark side and The Force Awakens was only 6 years. I was under the impression it was a 15. I was under the impression it was 15 because based on how much authority and everything else that the First Order has and how much power they have and how together they are as, like, you know, an organization, it needed to be at least 10 years. I was going to say upwards, like, I would say about 15. And you know what? Maybe Snoke was ruling the First Order for a couple years before he actually, you know, got Ben Solo and is just like, you're Kylo Ren now. It made sense for Kylo's turn to be between 10 and 15 years ago. But apparently it was only 6 when he was 23 years old, and you're like, yeah. So apparently Disney wants me to believe that Luke Skywalker, one of the most optimistic, loving, emotional people, became a bitter, old, crusty hermit in 6 years. And I'm like, no, sorry. Gonna have to stop you there. Because that's not Luke. That is not the Luke I know. That is not the Luke I know. Something had to have been more traumatic for him to fall to that state of depression. Something would have to have been more traumatic. Like I said, and like I really, really am praying they do in 9, not that I know if I'm actually going to see 9 or not, is they reveal that Luke actually had a wife and child and his wife was murdered in front of him. Maybe even Ben murdered his wife. We don't know. But his wife was murdered and his daughter was lost. And, well, we find out Rey is his daughter because that's the only thing that makes any sense. But that's another video. So, yeah, apparently he's trying to disgust Rey and basically turn everyone away. And he also has this map, you know, from The Force Awakens, the big thing we need to find, the map to Luke Skywalker. He actually gave part of the map to R2-D2 and gave the other part of the map probably to Lor San Tekka, that old guy at the beginning of The Force Awakens, so that when it was dire enough, Leia or whoever else could come and find Luke and get him and bring him back. But now Rey, who's there on the authority of his sister, asking for help after finding this map and putting it all together, is asking for help, and Luke says, go away. That is not Luke Skywalker. I probably said something like that before, but you know what? Whatever. And he also is just like, I'm gonna train you, but I'm gonna have to teach you why the Jedi should end. And I'm just like, I thought that would already happen when you were the only living Jedi. Because, you know, here's the thing. Luke Skywalker's character was in The Last Jedi, was an objective copy-paste of Obi-Wan Kenobi and Yoda. So anyone who says that his characterization makes sense is wrong, because not only does the time frame not it doesn't necessitate his characterization, it's also just a basic copy and paste of Obi-Wan because Rian needed Luke to be a crusty old dirtbag, pretty much. And that's not how you write Rian, I'm sorry. So, here's something I also don't understand. It was in the original trilogy where I think it was Obi-Wan who told Luke that he's just like, you might be the last of the old Jedi, but you are the first of the new. So I don't understand why Rian portrayed him as having just willingly accepted all the teachings of the Jedi, because he wouldn't have. Because Luke was never fully trained as a Jedi. He left Jedi training in order to, go save his friend. He trained with Yoda for a month maybe? A month, maybe 6 weeks? I don't know. He was not trained fully as a Jedi. So he never really abided by the Jedi teachings in general, because he embraced his emotions, and it was something that he took pride in and that he used to his benefit and the benefit of the galaxy. He used his emotions in a positive way, and sometimes it got the best of him, but that's just how life is. Nothing is going to be inherently good or inherently bad. Gotta accept it the way it goes. So Luke Skywalker, he knew the Jedi were flawed. I'm pretty sure Yoda probably told him something like that at some point, or Obi-Wan told him something like that. But in general, Luke knew that the Jedi were flawed. He never would have unquestioningly embraced the Jedi principles as they stood. And here's something else I don't understand. This is something, I'm just going to read you what I wrote here because it's important to say it exactly this way. After seeing what he and Anakin as Darth Vader were capable of, he would have never, ever selfishly trained Ben Solo with hubris because he was a Skywalker, because he saw the darkness in his own family in Return of the Jedi and willingly threw it aside. Luke Skywalker saw the darkness in his own family, and he knew the capability that his family has for darkness. So he would not have been like, oh, the Skywalker, that mighty Skywalker blood. I swear to God, when I heard Luke Skywalker say that in The Last Jedi, my brain started to dissociate. I'm not even kidding. Because I'm just like, who the fuck is this guy? What am I watching? Because this is not Luke Skywalker. Luke Skywalker is not that cocky. Luke Skywalker knows his family is very fallible and very vulnerable to the dark side, and he wouldn't selfishly train his nephew because of his mighty Skywalker blood. Luke Skywalker does not have that kind of hubris about his family. Yes, Luke Skywalker dearly loves his family, but he knows how deeply flawed and vulnerable his family is to the dark side. So why would he, put all of his faith and trust in the only Skywalker offspring, allegedly, but Rey's probably a Skywalker. Why would he do that? He knows what his family is capable of. He saw what he himself was capable of in the throne room scene in Return of the Jedi, when he almost took his own father's life. And he saw being like, every single day for his life what his father was capable of as Darth Vader. He knows what his family is capable of, so why would he push everything he believed in into Ben Solo? He knew what to look for. He knew how to help them, and he knew that the Jedi were flawed. So why would he mindlessly, unquestioningly embrace all these teachings that he knew were wrong? And now the whole thing about The Last Jedi is that the Jedi have to end, and it's just like, it should have already. Because Luke Skywalker was never a real Jedi, like the Jedi Order Jedi. He was the truest Jedi to ever live, but he was not the traditional Order Jedi. He would have never, ever been allowed on the council because he was in league to some extent with Qui-Gon, except he was actually more liberal than Qui-Gon. Okay, so that's the whole, thing. That's all the side. But now we're going to talk about the crux. And I know everyone's been waiting for it, and I'm sorry it's taken this long. I didn't even think it was going to take this long. I'll be honest with you, I really didn't. Get ready. Okay, so the Kylo Ren debacle. And we know what that is. So apparently, Rian Johnson thinks that Luke Skywalker would have, tried to murder his nephew in cold blood while he was sleeping. Because that is definitely something Luke Skywalker would absolutely do on any given Tuesday night, right? I literally can't believe that. And that people actually try to justify that. I literally see red when people try to justify that to me. And I'm wearing red, how appropriate. I see red when people justify that to me. Because it is so objectively wrong in every single way imaginable. Luke Skywalker tried to murder his nephew, his twin sister, and his best friend's only child. You know what? If that's true, then you know what? I'm a pig named Sally. Because I can't even fathom that as any kind of logical character action that Luke Skywalker would have ever even thought of. And when people say that Luke Skywalker wouldn't have even thought of doing that at any point, people are just like, well, Luke Skywalker was scared. And I'm just like, And you think he wasn't scared when his genocidal father was trying to, murder him several times? You think he wasn't scared when he was, ambushed by stormtroopers? You think he wasn't scared? So you think he's gonna, because this one child, his nephew, is sleeping and he's, vaguely emo at this point, and he peers into his head, and it's just like sees all the darkness in him and sees what he could become, that he's just gonna fucking kill him because can't let it happen. I can't, I really can't. And talking about this actually makes me very emotional, because the thought that someone might actually think that that's something Luke Skywalker would do is actually so personally offensive to me. And I'm sure Mark Hamill kind of feels the same way. It's so personally offensive that it tugs at everything in me. Because as much as I never considered myself a Star Wars super fan, I know who Luke Skywalker is, but apparently now I am a Star Wars super fan because I understand Star Wars more than the freaking directors of this godforsaken movie. But you know what? I'm just go there. I'm just gonna go there. People say that there's a precedence for, Luke to have tried to kill his nephew. And I'm just like, bitch, where? But they say that the precedence is, well, Luke almost killed his father in Return of the Jedi. And I'm just like, you do realize that his father has literally ruled the galaxy as the second most evil guy for 20 years? And upwards of 20 years. And he is a real, tangible, genocidal active threat against both his family and the galaxy, but mainly his family. He is a real, tangible, genocidal active threat against his family and the galaxy. He, in Return of the Jedi, prior to Luke losing control, Darth Vader threatened the life and integrity of his twin sister, who he really just told her that she was his sister. And he deeply loves her because, she's his sister, twin sister. Darth Vader threatened the life and integrity of his twin sister. And it made sense that Luke would go absolutely nuts. You're not going to hurt my sister. You can do whatever you want to me, but you're not going to hurt my sister. Because, he loves his family above everything else. And I know someone's watching this video and it's just like, well, Vader was his family too. And I'm like, but yeah. But when he made that threat against Leia, Luke started to realize that, Luke probably thought, oh shit, I'm wrong. He's not going to turn for me. And he had no other choice. I mean, I still believe that he sensed the conflict in Vader, but at the same time, he literally just threatened the life and integrity of his twin sister. And I really don't think that that's out of character, and it definitely does not set a precedent for Luke Skywalker attempting to kill his sleeping, defenseless, vaguely emo nephew who's literally done nothing wrong at the time. Yeah, he looked inside his mind and he saw what he might do. But Luke Skywalker knows, and he's been aware of this one crucial fact that makes this whole theory fall apart. Luke Skywalker knows that visions of the future are constantly in flux, so why would he have the faith in the darkness that he saw in Ben's head, that was definitely going to come to fruition, regardless of whatever he did, that this was just going to happen? Luke Skywalker knows that visions of the future are always in flux. And aside from that, there's a fleeting desire allegedly to that this almost murder was a fleeting desire. But why did Luke Skywalker have his lightsaber when he was basically completely, safe in a area that he built if he was just going to go talk to his nephew? I'm pretty sure Rian Johnson didn't think that through, but you know what? kind of sounds like premeditation to me. So you want me to believe that Luke Skywalker would have, willingly premeditated the cold-blooded murder of his nephew with no reason? Please explain to me why, if he had such a hubris in the mighty Skywalker blood that was inside Ben Solo. Please explain, because I'm waiting for an explanation. So the Return of the Jedi thing, where Luke almost killed Darth Vader, until he saw himself. After his father's hand was cut off, he saw himself in his father and saw what he was capable of and stopped himself because he realized that his emotions were completely out of control, and willingly, knowingly threw his lightsaber aside and said, I'm sorry, you're wrong, Your Highness. I will not turn. I'm a Jedi like my father before me. And he knew he just put his life in incredible danger. But, I don't know, because he knew that there was so good in his father, and he loved his father, and he saw what he was capable of, and everything all at once, he took control of himself again. So, that's how Return of the Jedi and Luke almost falling to the dark side and almost killing Vader is different than the situation with Ben Solo at the time, because Ben had done nothing wrong. Ben literally was vaguely emo at best, and that was it. Luke Skywalker would not attempt to murder his nephew for any reason in general. His nephew was entrusted to him by his sister and his best friend. And we all know what Luke really would have done in a time where he thought that his nephew was feeling like dark tendencies. He said he saw it at times in his training, and Luke is very aware of the darkness in his family and how strong it can possibly be, because Luke saw himself almost fall to the dark side, and he saw what his father was capable of and what he was capable of. And if he saw his nephew displaying dark side tendencies, do you really think that he would just, go up and decide to murder his nephew? Or, peek inside his head when he knows that the future is always in flux and that visions of the future can and sometimes are wrong? Do you think he would have taken the visions of the future as gospel? Because I don't. I really don't. So I don't know why there are people who actually try to justify Luke Skywalker's characterization, because Rian Johnson fundamentally misunderstands every facet of the character of Luke Skywalker. There was nothing in The Last Jedi Luke Skywalker, Jake Skywalker, that resembled anything like Luke Skywalker. He wasn't there. He would not have tried to kill his nephew, especially under the circumstances, as I have chronicled in this video. There is no precedence for him trying to kill his nephew. There is no precedence for him to, turn away people who need his help. There is no precedence for his characterization in general. There is nothing in The Last Jedi and Luke Skywalker that was actually Luke Skywalker. And anyone who says different is so objectively wrong. And I am going to make the final statement on this video that Rian Johnson fundamentally misunderstands every single last facet of the character of Luke Skywalker, and that he felt he had the right to write Luke Skywalker in the way he did when Mark Hamill told him that his character didn't feel the same and that he fundamentally disagreed with every single choice he made for the character is insulting and disgusting and makes me wanna, punch him. But I'm not going to do that because I'm non-violent. But I cannot believe that Rian Johnson has this hubris that makes him think he had the right to write Luke Skywalker the way he did. I can't even fathom that. This was not Luke Skywalker. And I hope you enjoyed the video. May the Force be with you, because it wasn't with Rian.